Welcome to Thoughts of the Day, daily devotions with Youth with a Mission.
Hey everybody, so today I'm going to share something that's not from me but from someone else. So yesterday I shared a word from Darlene, and in it she referenced something that Tom Bloomer had sent out, and so I looked for a video version of Tom's word and couldn't find it, and so I thought today I would take the text version and just simply read it out for you. But of course, any of you who know Tom know that I'm lacking something. I'm lacking lots of things these days, but something else Tom has, so I'm going to invoke the spirit of Tom Bloomer. Ready? So here we go. Here's Tom's word. And this was released in April 2020. We are praying for more fruit. That is our desire. But there are conditions for bearing more fruit, and one of them is dying. Another is pruning, to change the image, and the experienced gardener will confirm that correct pruning is the key to bearing much fruit, and pruning is also the only regular maintenance needed for mature plants. YWAM is mature at 60, and we've also been in a season of rapid growth, actually wild and unchecked growth. The factor that concerns me is the number of small ministries and tiny bases that are not bearing much fruit. They should be pruned. I'm going to set this down now. For example, I know personally one committed, lovable couple who have been trying to pioneer a base in an European country for several years now with no staff. They have teenage children, work outside jobs due to inadequate support, and have tried to run DTSs with 2, 3 or 4 students. They have 2 apartments for the ministry, which has worked until now because they house DTS outreach teams targeting their big city, and that's how they've paid the rent. But that phase is over, and it's not just for a few weeks. The world has turned and will never be the way it was. We have not been this way before. Another worrying trend is small teams, sometimes only a couple, going out to pioneer YWAM in some place. Sometimes they have children and or one of them has to work at least half-time. They proclaim that they're pioneering YWAM, but in too many cases it's not working. There is no fruit. Both trends are failing because they're trying to operate outside of our anointing. YWAM is teams, not a couple. A couple all alone in a city cannot be YWAM by definition. Apparently each of these couples has been released by a YWAM leader somewhere, but letting people do what they want is not leadership. It is irresponsible. All of these so-called ministries should be pruned. The people should be recalled to join growing ministries and bases or released to begin the long and difficult preparation to be influential in the spheres. Most YWAMers are not qualified to have an influence in the sphere. They have nothing to say. A symptom of this lack of preparation is the unprofessional manner that many betray when we try to sign up on LinkedIn. It would be funny if it weren't so pitiful. In September 2019, I gave a word at our Big for Switzerland charismatic conference to the effect that a wave of judgment would soon sweep the world, and that this time Switzerland would not be spared as it was in 1914 to 18 and 1939 to 45. This word was well received, and I was able to lead in a time of prayer for 90 minutes afterwards, consisting entirely of confessing the sins of the nation. I shared this word with the leaders of YWAM in Francophone Switzerland a few weeks later, and was well received by that group also. Well, what I did not see, nor ever imagined, was the coming economic judgment that would be precipitated by a worldwide pandemic. So YWAM is now being pruned. Conferences, schools, outreaches, everything. It is not a selective pruning of our choice. It is a massive, universal, blunt force pruning. My conclusion and hope is that we would not resist the pruning. We need to be ready to let ministries and bases die and not to try to keep them on life support. The severe pruning has already begun, but if we collaborate with the master gardener, we will enter into a season where we are smaller and more nimble, but able to bear much more fruit, 100-fold. Since the whole church and our nations are also being severely pruned, wide doors of ministry will open up rapidly. The potential in this new season is mind-blowing. We need to be praying and acting to see that our Redeemer will do what he does best. We know that our Redeemer lives. Which branches should be pruned both in our lives and in our ministries? First, the dead and dying. What is not bearing fruit? Are all of your activities actually reaching and ministering to people? Even if there is growth, activity and noise, they do not necessarily mean fruit. They may even mask the lack of it. We love vision and challenges and mobilisation in YWAM, but is this exciting thing that we're hearing about actually bearing fruit? Second, branches rubbing against each other, they will eventually scrape the protective bark off and open the plant up to disease. Do you see two people continually in conflict? Healthy disagreement is fine, iron sharpens iron. But if constant conflict hurts morale and eventually destroys hope, we need to tell which one of them has to go. When their conflicts start to negatively affect those around them, one of them has to go. In Genesis 13:5-11, we see that Abraham and Lot had to separate because of constant conflict between their followers. Separation is not a sin. It can often prevent a situation from degenerating to the point of bitter infighting and jealousy. Third, pruning often consists not just of shortening a bush, giving it a haircut, but for many bushes, especially mature ones, we remove 1/3 of the oldest growth every year, cutting from the bottom, so the bush is opened up to air circulation, reducing the risk of airborne diseases. Check out your oldest ministry activities. Are they still bearing fruit? A caution: avoid the temptation of immaturity to simply sweep away everything that went before to be able to start over with a clean slate. The old wine is best. Fourth, the opening of a plant lets the light in, and new growth occurs where light can strike the branches. In recent years, a new pruning technique is being recommended called well of light. For fruit trees and for the most freestanding roses, it involves cutting the centre branches completely, leaving a basket-shaped plant whose walls are the exterior branches. To get an idea, hold out your hand palm up and spread your fingers and see how the light can easily reach the centre of the plant and bring forth new life in the branches. In our early days, we used to talk a lot about walking in the light, in other words, keeping short accounts with our sins. In many of our staff and community gatherings, we would wait before the Lord and ask the Spirit to show us if we were holding anything against a brother or sister. And we would not go on with the meeting until everyone had the opportunity to quietly ask forgiveness. When was the last time you did this in your community? Are you walking in the light, or in old hurts and misunderstandings and suspicions? There is an enormous amount of travel, meetings, conferences, constant scurrying about in the church. When I teach young leaders, they are always amazed to hear me emphasize the Sabbath. Many of them have never heard any teaching about it. I was struck by the Facebook post of Al Akamoff. We neglected the Sabbath for so many years, and now the Sabbath has come to us. Yes, we are all in an enforced season of rest, of pruning. I saw it coming last December, but saw it as only an economic judgment, never imagining that the worldwide recession or depression would be kicked off by a pandemic. I also thought that it would be somewhat voluntary, but that we would have time to put it in place. Instead, it is involuntary, brutal and massive. It may seem brutal, but beginning gardeners underestimate just how severe a good pruning job must be. We have a saying, let your neighbour prune your rose bushes. This is because we're all tempted to be sentimental and not to prune nearly enough. The master gardener is not sentimental. He lives in a well of light. In his love, he will prune and even judge severely. See Isaiah 5:1-7. Sometimes this is the only thing that can bring us back to a total dependence on him. Already, our conferences, schools, seminars, outreaches, and community life meetings are being severely pruned, but we must be ready to accept the pruning away of many of our ministries and even bases. Let us embrace what the Lord is doing. The final result can be that we will be able to bear much fruit, much more than ever before. Tom. Thanks, guys. Take time to digest the word, read over the text version, and put it in mind in the context of what God's already been doing in our community lives in and amongst YWAM Scotland. Thanks and have a great day. Bye.